the election of 1824 and John Quincy Adams' presidency. So, Monroe's term is ending. 1824, we've got to have an election. We've got William Crawford is chosen by Congressional Caucus. In other words, high-ranking members of Congress came together and chose William Crawford as the candidate to run for president. However, this method, remember we talked about those democratic political institutions, is really starting to be seen as outdated by 1824. It's seen as undemocratic, and many congressmen do not even attend the meeting out of protest. John Quincy Adams, though, is favored by Monroe. Remember, he had been Secretary of State. He had done a great job at Secretary of State. He had been an advocate of the American system that is gaining popularity. And don't forget, Secretary of State had been an important springboard to the presidency. Jefferson had been Secretary of State. Madison had been Secretary of State. Monroe had been Secretary of State. Why not John Quincy Adams? John C. Calhoun, the Secretary of War from South Carolina, though, is also popular, especially people who believe in the idea of states' rights, that states are equal to the federal government, that states can nullify laws, that the compact theory should be followed. But we also have the Speaker of the House of Representatives, a very important position in Congress, held by Mr. Henry Clay, the chief proponent of the American system. He's also a Westerner from Kentucky, so he's going to garner support from people out west. Clay is probably the most important American in the first half of the 1800s never to be elected president. And we also have the war hero from the War of 1812, Andrew Jackson, also a Westerner, also a slave owner from Tennessee as well, so maybe a little bit more popular with Southerners. Calhoun withdraws. He says, I'll run for vice president. And then Crawford suffers a stroke. As a result, Jackson picks up a lot of Southern votes because he no longer has any Southern competitors for this presidency. Jackson continues to gain support from those opposed to active government in the economy. People who like a laissez-faire policy, people who are against the excessive tariff, people who don't think a Bank of the United States is good for America, people who don't want to see federal funds spent on internal improvements that may only benefit a portion of the country, they get behind Jackson. And Jackson wins the popular vote. However, no one gets a majority of electoral votes. No one has over half of the electoral votes. And as a result, as dictated by the Constitution, the top 3 names are sent to the House of Representatives to determine the presidency. Remember, Henry Clay is the Speaker of the House. Now, Clay finished 4th, so he has no chance of winning in the House. However, many people believe that Clay persuaded House members to support John Quincy Adams. And on paper, it makes sense. Clay was the biggest proponent of the American system. Adams also supported the American system. However, the rumor that is spread after Henry Clay is named Secretary of State by Adams is that there was a corrupt bargain made between Clay, that Clay and Adams struck a deal that if Clay would get the House to vote for Adams, Adams would make him Secretary of State, which after all is proving to be a very important position. These accusations are made by Jackson supporters. These accusations are believed by Americans. Not surprisingly, John Quincy Adams comes in after this controversial election and struggles early on in his presidency. Jackson supporters are very strong in Congress, and that notion of the corrupt bargain really hurts Adams' support early on in his presidency. It doesn't help that we are still suffering from the Panic of 1819, and this is blamed on 2 big parts of the American system. It's blamed on the tariff and the economic troubles. That's what they called economic troubles panics at this time. The economic troubles are also blamed on the Bank of the United States. So the tariff and the bank, 2 key components of the American system are blamed for the Panic of 1819. They're seen as the reason why the economy is struggling when Adams still takes office. And John Quincy Adams is very pro-tariff. He's very pro-bank. In fact, he even calls for more federally funded programs. For example, he would like to see a national university built. This amount of money being spent on something that's not going to benefit every single American is strongly opposed. Farmers begin asking for tariff protection. They want to see tariffs to protect them as well. And manufacturers still want their tariff in place. Cotton, however, does not, because cotton is getting a tariff put on it by Britain in response to American tariffs. The cotton owners do not support the tariff, but they strongly support Jackson, in large part because he himself owned slaves. So congressmen engaged in what's called log rolling. Okay, that's vote trading. That's you support this for me and I'll support this for you. And as a result, tariffs are raised across the board in 1828. We have tariffs on agricultural products. We have tariffs on manufactured goods. There's tariffs on almost all American products. This is called the Tariff of Abominations by Southerners who oppose the tariff. Abominations means bad. So this tariff, the highest in history up until that point, is known as the Tariff of Abominations.